cash? Text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
frankly, things will get worse before they get better.
Don't we just know it?
There is a budget coming in October, and it's going to be painful.
But is Keir Starmer actually being honest?
Let me be clear, I'm going to be really tough about this with the unions, as I'm being tough with everybody else.
Yeah, do you believe that?
I'm not really going to take lectures on this from the people who dragged our country so far down in the last few years.
He arrogantly ignores the cronyism scandal. I'll have all the reaction to the PM's doom and gloom speech. Plus, there was no mention in his speech of police officers being violently attacked amid gun and knife crime at Notting Hill Carnival. More evidence of two-tier Keir also tonight.
Get it! Strike! How do we get it? Strike! What do we want?
Pay restoration!
When do we want it?
Now!
Well, the doctors are now revolting over the BMA's warped gender ideology, which is possibly a step in the right direction. I'll bring you tomorrow's newspaper front pages with my wonderful panel. It is columnist and broadcaster Esther Krakow, director of the Centre of Migration and Economic Prosperity Stephen Wolfe, and political commentator Jonathan Liss. Oh, and find out what happens next here as a circus bear finally snaps. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Is Keir Starmer emerging as a massive authoritarian with no opposition and a huge majority? Next.
Patrick, thank you very much. The top stories this evening. The Prime Minister has warned the October budget will be painful, but he says the country will have to accept short-term pain for long-term good. During his speech in Downing Street this morning, Sir Keir Starmer warned things will get worse before they get better. And he said next week's return to Parliament will not be business as usual. He also addressed the recent riots, saying they showed the cracks in our society after 14 years of populism and failure. The Prime Minister also reiterated economic growth is the government's top priority.
I promised that we would get a grip on the problems that we face and that we would be judged by our actions, not by our words. I said before the election, and I say it again really clearly today, growth, and frankly by that I do mean wealth creation, is the #1 priority of this Labour government.
In other news, the Ministry of Justice has confirmed that only 100 spaces are left in male prisons in England and Wales. It comes as the number of people sent to prison has reached record levels. In July, the government set out legislation to reduce the amount of time inmates must spend in jail before they're automatically released, from 50% of their sentence to 40% in a bid to manage overcrowding. A Ministry of Justice spokesperson has said the new government inherited a justice system in crisis and has been forced into taking difficult but necessary action to ensure we can keep locking up dangerous criminals and also protect the public. A man's been charged with murder after officers stopped him at Notting Hill Carnival. Detectives had issued an appeal to locate Kamar Williams, who was wanted in connection with the fatal stabbing of a 53-year-old man. He will appear in court tomorrow. That's as 3 men have been arrested over the stabbing of a 32-year-old mother at Notting Hill Carnival, which left her in a critical condition. The woman was attending the family day on Sunday with her young child when she was attacked. The Metropolitan Police says it appears she became caught up in the middle of an altercation between 2 groups of men, but it's unclear if they were known to her. In total, 349 arrests were made over the Carnival weekend for a range of offences, including violence, sexual assaults and 60 attacks on police officers. And Mark Zuckerberg has admitted Facebook and Instagram were wrong to censor posts about COVID during the pandemic, and he was wrong to bow to pressure, he says. In a letter to a US committee investigating online content moderation, Mr. Zuckerberg said senior White House officials repeatedly pressured the company after US President Joe Biden was inaugurated in 2021. He said that Facebook made some choices that it would not have made today. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
It looks more and more like Sir Keir Starmer might be an incredibly authoritarian man. There were signs of it before the election, after he faced very strong allegations that he threatened Speaker Lindsay Hoyle over a Gaza ceasefire vote. When he was in opposition, he wanted harder, faster, longer lockdowns as well, didn't he? He's appointed Sue Gray as well as his chief of staff, and she's already faced bullying allegations and claims that she brought some staff to tears. Now, in the wake of the Southport attack and subsequent disorder, he appeared to lean on the judges to give out long sentences.
We're able to demonstrate the criminal justice system working speedily. So yesterday you saw the sentencing of individuals who've been involved in disorder days ago, some of them getting sentences as long as 3 years. That sent a very powerful message.
The Home Office then appeared to commit contempt of court by already finding everyone guilty, despite them not yet having a trial. Now, we've seen a marked increase in facial recognition technology being rolled out as well, haven't we? And today, when faced with the very serious allegation of cronyism, cash for access, sleaze, even borderline corruption, he just arrogantly dismisses it.
Most of these allegations and accusations are coming from the very people that dragged our country down in the first place. So you'll forgive me if I take that approach to it. But I'm not really going to take lectures on this from the people who dragged our country so far down in the last few years. Thank you.
Today we witnessed something that is straight out of the authoritarian playbook, OK? Claiming that things are so unbelievably bad because of your political opponents that it justifies Starmer taking really extreme action going forward.
But I have to be honest with you. Things are worse than we ever imagined. Things will get worse before they get better. I'll have to turn to the country and make big asks of you as well, to accept short-term pain for long-term good, the difficult trade-off for the genuine solution.
It's actually quite a skillful tactic, that, because that allows him to get away with lying in the run-up to the election. He can claim that the reality has changed and that what he promised then does not apply now. It also allows him to ignore his own role in the economic mess, borrowing £3.1 billion to pay the unions while callously taking winter fuel payments away from pensioners. And then there's how he treats the media, isn't there? In the run-up to the election, he needed GBNews viewers to vote for him, so he courted you. Now he doesn't, so he ignores you. He's answered one of our political editor, Christopher Hope's questions, just one time out of 5 press conferences since becoming PM. And today it looks like Ofcom will get more powerful. They suddenly need emergency powers to crack down on so-called misinformation online. Now, hey, look, some people will say...
That was a boring speech by a boring man dealing with the boring business of getting Britain back on its feet. And if you don't like that, you don't like Britain. If you don't want him to succeed, you don't want Britain to succeed.
Other people might think that Keir Starmer is becoming increasingly authoritarian while wielding a big majority and no opposition. And that is concerning stuff. Let's get our thoughts from my panel this evening. It's columnist and broadcaster Esther Krakow. We also have the director of the Centre of Migration and Economic Prosperity, Stephen Wolfe. And we also have journalist Jonathan Liss. Esther, I'll start with you on this. I mean, I have quite significant concerns, in case you couldn't tell, about how authoritarian Keir Starmer actually is the more we get to know him in power.
Well, I think authoritarian is probably the best word, because I don't think anyone expected this sort of institutionalization of our basic freedoms, right? So this whole kind of, it's technically called depoliticization, which isn't actually the removing of politics, but removing key institutions that are central to politics from political actors, from political influence. So by saying you have the, Ofcom gets to decide what's misinformation, what's hate. Well, the British public that it affects don't get to decide, because Ofcom is free from the influence of the public. Just like, the Bank of England and all these institutions that make key decisions on the lives of people in this country, but are removed from actually any sort of accountability. And this is what I call lazy politics, because it removes politicians from having to make those difficult decisions, from having to listen to the public, from having to have rigorous debate. And what in the long term happens is you see people disengaging more and more from politics. They think, what's the point? Because we vote for one thing, we don't get that. Politicians used to blame the EU. Now that we're out of the EU, they say, oh, we have to relegate it to Ofcom, or we have to relegate it to the Bank of England, all these other institutions. So people just think, what is the point? And more, Britain becomes unrecognisable. The idea of having some external body deciding what is misinformation or hate, and then potentially having the police show up at your doorstep, when you can't even have the police show up for a burglary, is just going to drive Britain down a dark path. And unfortunately, I think Keir Starmer has really got it wrong here.
Is he on a power trip?
Oh, absolutely, but I think all politicians are on a power trip who are in that position of power as a Prime Minister. But my concern is there's a systemic, institutional authoritarianism that's coming across our political elite. It's been going for a number of years. As Esther has quite rightly said, the use of organisations like Ofcom, the Bank of England, and all these variety of quangos that are coming out as though these people are the great and good. Actually, they're the poor and the weak. They're the stupid and the arrogant. They're the snobs of our society who look down upon people, anybody in those positions of power, and should actually be removed. And I have no respect for those people. I've met many of them at dinner parties. I've met many of them at institutions who say, look at me, I'm trying to help the world, but actually you're not. The thing that you dislike the most is the general public.
You see, the thing is, it wouldn't even be that bad if they were accountable. People who think for themselves, and that's why you hated Brexit, that's why you hated the referendum, because you believed you made those decisions. And all the manager, Keir Starmer, is doing, and that's all he is a managerial class, all he's trying to do is manage all these institutional systemic snobs.
that are running these non-governmental organisations and think tanks.
We've been on air for a few minutes. We've had a Jonathan Less eye roll. I'm going to just fire it over to you, Jonathan, and just say, look, you know, quite arrogantly just swatting away quite serious allegations of cronyism and corruption, the kind of which would have bogged down the Tories for months and months, no doubt there. Batting that off, you know, batting off, not taking questions from us here at GB News when what we were going to ask him, as I'm pretty sure he will have known, was have you done anything at all to consider cutting down on immigration since we had all of these protests? Is he actually quite dangerously authoritarian?
No, I don't think he's dangerously authoritarian. Also, Stephen, I don't think that people were... I think we can have good faith arguments about Brexit, OK? I have good faith arguments about Brexit, about why people voted Brexit. Can't we just accept that people on the Remain side might not all have been snobs who wanted to put down the working class? They might actually thought it was in our interest to be in the European Union.
I'm actually saying those people in the institutions running them.
But there's no evidence that Ofcom was not a pro-EU organisation. I think we just...
I think what he's referring to...
I think it's just a silly... It's just a distraction. Look, as I've said to you many times, Patrick, I'm very prepared to criticise Starmer. I think he's done what I think he's doing wrong. I think he's naturally quite an authoritarian person. I don't think he can become the head of the Director of Public Prosecutions without having a slightly authoritarian streak. And I think that he's been incredibly ruthless in how he's treated the left of his party, for example. That doesn't mean that every single decision he takes as Prime Minister is going to be wrong. And I thought it was important today that he said his government was not going to be perfect, for example. So look, there are things.
So he's warning us of his authoritarianism.
There are things in his speech that I agreed with. There are things that I think that were wrong, and I think it would be silly of me to kind of just take a tribal position and just try and say that everything he did was right.
I think the bigger concern here is the homogeneity of the kinds of people that are in these non-governmental institutions, these Quangos, these Bank of Englands, these Ofcoms, because they all think the same and they're not accountable to the British public. Those are the two main issues. If all of those people reflected the British public's opinions in equal measure and they were accountable to the British public, who give the government the power to even give these people any sort of authority, that would be fine. But you see people getting more and more removed from politics because they know the type of person they're going to meet in these.
But Ofcom is obviously accountable to the government ultimately. There's not, it's not
government to the people.
No. Well, exactly.
Can I just come back in here on something? Because I just want to keep it quite focused to the things he said today. And I think that there was, for me, something straight out of the authoritarian playbook, which was, I'm going to stand here now, I'm going to over-reg how absolutely catastrophically awful everything was before, blame everything on my opponents. I'm not saying everything was great, far from it, but the extent to which he's now saying, we could have had no idea it was as bad as this, and now the promises I made to you when I asked you to vote for me don't apply anymore. We're going to have to rip everything up and start again. And that to me is quite dangerous.
It's also
it is absolutely dangerous, but it's also dishonest because he did have access to the OBR's records. They did have access to the government. They've had, through his chief of staff, the ability to understand all the documents that related to the economy behind that as well. So for him to say that the things were worse than it actually is untrue.
It's also ahistorical.
Well, the OBR did produce a letter that said that actually they didn't know all the details.
But it's also
things had actually gone
ahistorical.
and been implemented by the Conservative Party. See, the problem with it is that, to an extent, though, Patrick, the Conservative Party did that themselves when they said that Labour left a note saying there was no money left when they come in. So we have to watch this, but it is dangerous for people to say, I've got to change everything, and therefore I'll ignore what I said.
And none of the promises he made matter, which is the
but that's not true, Esther, because even today...
What it is.
No, but it's not true, though, is it? Because, look, I think that any kind of threat of austerity is completely wrong. It's not the answer. It won't deliver any kind of desired outcomes. If there's one thing we should have learned from the coalition, it's that.
Why is he doing
But they're not going to actually break manifesto commitments. They're not going to raise VAT or income tax or national insurance. That Starmer reiterated today. That would be suicidal to do that. So I assume that
so it's not suicidal to take away the winter fuel payment.
I think it's suicidal. I think it was a mistake. I think it was suicidal.
Can I also just ask this? There's the idea now that Keir Starmer currently doesn't have an opposition, basically for a couple of reasons. Both Parliament is not sitting and the Tories are in a complete mess and Reform aren't big enough and the Lib Dems aren't in opposition, are they? I don't even know where they are at the moment, right? So there's that
Probably
side.
in Cabo.
There's that side of it, right? So there's no opposition to anything. He's got a big majority. He can force things through. But can I just round us off on this discussion by... I actually just thought that was catastrophically awful leadership today. We have a bloke who is leading this country, who stood up outside his own house in his back garden, called the entire media there, the world's media will have been watching it, and he told everyone how flipping awful Britain is and how it's going to get even worse Why would anyone in their right mind with a bit of money or a bit about them stick around here? That is the opposite of what you want from a leader.
He didn't say the country was bad. He said it had been governed badly and had been left in a terrible state, which is true.
Things are going to get worse. It's
This I disagree
awful.
with. This I disagree with. I think that you need to give people hope.
Yeah.
We have an entire generation in Britain now who have never known any kind of hope, who
I would encourage to leave.
Who don't think,
Next
as
opportunity.
every single generation pretty much the last 100 years has thought, we're going to have it better than our parents did. And this is the first generation that's basically become habituated to the fact that we're not going to have it worse.
For the last 25 years, people have not had hope in this country.
Well, I think it's particularly since the crash.
Well, it's prior to that. It was the end of the Labour Party. Then we've had a couple of financial crashes. Then we've had COVID. Then we've had the devastation on our economy caused by the Ukraine war.
Being told constantly,
and we're constantly told it's really bad.
We're going to have to do something about this.
But then we look across into the United States and we see how they're flying. The difference between them and us is palpable. If most people had the opportunity to go to the United States and get a job over there, they would.
Yep, I would.
They would.
Hand on heart, absolutely.
There's more money over there in like I've seen builders over there that were paid the same level as bankers over here.
Look, you want a leader, and you've got James O'Brien, who's fair play, I know it says very often, coming out and taking that stance, which is that was a boring man delivering a boring speech, getting on with the boring task of government, etc. I would argue that wrapped up in all of that were some untruths. Actually, it was quite an authoritarian streak and a lot of misery and doom and gloom. And I don't know if that's what we really want from a leader. But anyway, coming up, thousands of violent criminals, including sex offenders, were let off with a little sorry last year. Oh, sorry about all of that. I didn't really mean it. But will Labour now get a hold of lawless Britain? Former LBC political editor Theo Usherwood is offering his expert analysis shortly. He's also going to address a social media storm that was caused over the weekend involving him. But first, as the Tories slam this budget warning from Starmer...
There is a budget coming in October, and it's going to be painful.
Was the Prime Minister there lying about the state of the economy to justify tax rises? Former Tory MP Miriam Cates goes head-to-head with Labour councillor Brendan Chilton. It's live and it's next. Stay tuned.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
The Princess of Wales could be back to full duties by the autumn. This would be wonderful news.
Well, I actually don't think she is going to be back to full-time duties by the autumn. I think that's how I read it. But in fact, I think what they were saying, this is a report by the Daily Mail's royal editor, Rebecca English, is that Catherine is still recovering and she's still having treatment, but she doubts whether she'll be back to full-time duties, but we will be seeing her. So we will be, seeing her at big royal events, and she'll, if she's up to it, she will, appear now and then, but most of her work will be done from home because she's still having the cancer treatment. And as she said way back in the summer, she has good days and she has bad days.
Yeah, and we can all understand that, can't we? But it does make such a difference, doesn't it, to catch glimpses of her and seeing her and William this week congratulating the GB athletes after the success at the Olympics. It really does make all the difference just to see her, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And I think, she wants to get out there, but I don't think she's going to be back at the daily chore of royal duties, visiting hospitals, things like that. I don't think she'd be strong enough to do that. But, she looks terrific. We know she's had a brutal year, in fact, probably much, much worse than any of us can imagine. And so she's, doing what her doctors are telling her. She's taking it very gently. I'm sure she wants to go full steam ahead, but she is being restrained, as it were.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Now, are Labour lying about the state of the economy? It's time now for the head-to-head. During his doom and gloom address to the nation, Chuckles Prime Minister Keir Starmer paved the way for tax rises in October's budget with this bleak message.
I will be honest with you. There is a budget coming in October, and it's going to be painful. We have no other choice, given the situation that we're in. Those with the broadest shoulders should bear the heavier burden.
Oh, gosh, OK. Former PM and outgoing Tory leader Rishi Sunak responded by saying Keir Starmer's speech today was the clearest indication of what Labour has been planning to do all along. Raise your taxes. And Tory leadership hopeful candidate Kemi Badenoch said Starmer's, quote, dishonest analysis of the economy won't wash with the British public. The PM and Chancellor Rachel Reeves have both repeatedly claimed that the Tories left behind a £22 billion black hole. So, is the Prime Minister now lying about the state of the economy to justify his radical economic taxation? To go head-to-head on this, I'm joined by former Tory MP Miriam Cates and Labour councillor and CEO of the Independent Business Network, Brendan Chilton. Both of you, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Miriam, is Keir Starmer lying, and if so, why?
I don't think he's lying. I think he's right that our economy is in a very difficult state. But I think his analysis of why we're in trouble is wrong, and therefore his solutions are wrong. And I think if you listen to what he says, but then pay attention to what the Labour Party is actually doing, they're talking about growth, growth, growth. But what they're actually doing is redistribution. And those are two very different things. And you know, the Labour Party and the left traditionally have been about redistribution. They think taxation is there to equalise rich and poor, and that's a perfectly respectable political point of view. But the problem is, if you haven't got anything to redistribute, which we don't have at the moment, all you're going to do is make the whole country poorer. And my fear is that although he's saying he wants growth, what he's actually doing is penalising wealth creators who already bear an enormous burden in taxation. I think the top 1% of earners pay 30% of all the income tax that the government takes in. They're already bearing a big enough burden. And if he goes further and further down that route, all he's going to do is penalise wealth creation, and then everybody will be poorer.
Yeah, and it is on that point, Brendan, that I will bring you in, because if he'd have stood on a manifesto pledge of taking the winter fuel allowance off pensioners, he'd have lost the election, wouldn't he? He didn't do that, and now he's doing it, and I think that's a lie, isn't it?
Well, I think when you look at the winter fuel payment issue, most pensioners I've spoken to that were in the bracket who are going to have that winter fuel payment removed say they don't need it. I mean, why does, for example, Sir Elton John need a winter fuel payment? He doesn't. Why does His Majesty the King need a winter fuel payment? He doesn't. They're extremely wealthy individuals, yet this universal system, which frankly we can no longer afford.
He didn't tell us he was going to do it during the election campaign, though, Brendan, did he? He didn't mention it.
Well, of course, when Labour come into power, when Labour come into power out of the election, they uncovered the state the economy was in, and the OBR have confirmed, of course, with the letter that was published very recently, that up to £5 billion extra was not allocated for by the previous government. And so when you come in, you have to deal with the realities you face. And for us to have carried on willy-nilly and said, oh, all is well, I actually think it's quite refreshing to have a Prime Minister that's prepared to stand in front of the nation and go, do you know what, everyone? We've got to tighten our belts. We're in for a rough ride for a while.
Okay.
But at the end, we'll get to where we need to be.
All right, but Miriam, I do put it to you that he also appears to be ignoring his role in it. You know, we all predicted this. He would come in, Rachel Reeves would come in, they'd say they've looked under the bonnet of the nation now and they've found, you know, rats living in there and it's a complete cesspit and we're going to have to actually do things that were much more extreme than we ever thought. But actually, we don't know if that's particularly true, is it? I mean, he's made it worse. £3.1 billion worth of borrowing last month alone just to pay his union mates.
Absolutely, and what he's done is, and what Rachel Reeves has done, is given into the pay demands of the union. And again, lots of the public will say, well, nurses, teachers, they deserve pay. Of course they do, and we'd all, in an ideal world, love to pay everybody more. But the reality is that this country hasn't got enough growth, it hasn't got enough, we don't produce enough, we don't have enough wealth in order to be able to pay those people more. And so all we're doing is indebting our country further. But I think the problem that we have is that actually the economic problems that we have in this country are as a result of a whole political consensus of more than, of 30 years. And one of the big problems we have is a huge amount of debt. COVID debt that Starmer wanted more and more of. QE, quantitative easing from the financial crash that both major parties supported. And actually the debt-based economy that we now have is not the Conservatives' fault, it's not Labour's fault, it's the whole political class's fault, if you like. And actually, unless we're going to be honest about that and say, as a country, we're living beyond our means, in an ageing society, we can't afford the NHS as it is, we can't afford pensions as they are, we're going to have to have a discussion about how we tackle these systemic issues, then fundamentally the debate will be dishonest if we don't acknowledge those things. And just to say, well, it's the Tories' fault, we're going to fix the NHS, it's so shallow, it's not meaningful, and I think people know that it's not true.
But if I had just been elected and I realised that actually I didn't ever have a proper plan, the first thing I would do, Brendan, to try to mask that is to deliver a huge press conference saying that the situation has now completely changed because the people who used to live in this house, it turns out that they did everything even worse than we ever thought. And so I'm going to have to draw this one up on the back of a fag packet. He never had a plan, did he, Brendan?
I don't agree, Patrick. I mean, with Labour Party have been in power now for just under 2 months. They've already committed to massively overhauling the planning system, which will drive massive house building in this country, which we desperately need. It's not going to happen overnight. You can't undo 14 years in 2 months. The second thing Labour have done is set up GB Energy, which is currently at the moment securing the financing to make us energy independent.
Brendan, sorry to interrupt you, mate, but, on that, they said they had a fully costed plan to make sure our bills didn't go up. That was one of the promises that went out the flipping window last week, wasn't it?
Well, the third, just say on that, Patrick, of course, this is just, again, been in 2 months. Ed Miliband's announced this. It's currently being set up. Again, you can't undo 14 years in 2 months. It's going to take a little while. And I think most people listening to this will realise that in 2 months you can't undo 14 years. Thirdly, we've been criticised for saying that, there is a consensus in this country. Well, when Keir Starmer stands before the people and says we can no longer afford winter fuel payments, he's criticised for taking money off pensions.
He can't afford that, but he can afford huge public sector wage rises that aren't just a one-off, but as a year-on-year, and then pensions, which are 40, 50, 60 years into the future. That's all implicated in what he's done. But I'll come back to the fact that the problem is we don't actually own anything in this country. You can set up a great British energy company if you like, you can nationalise the railways, you can set up a wealth fund, but we've sold off all our assets to America, to the Chinese, to the French. So unless you actually talk about the reality of the fact that we don't make enough stuff, we don't export enough stuff, we don't own enough stuff, those are the reasons for our economic problems. And all he's doing, I'm afraid, is papering over the cracks, which absolutely is what the Conservatives did too.
Exactly.
But we need a much more in-depth discussion in this country about the real causes of our economic problems. Otherwise, we're never going to find the solutions.
Yeah, look, we do. And to be fair, Miriam, there is, as you have... I do think genuinely, deliberately articulated, things were done poorly, right, for the last 14 years. And I don't think anyone's trying to hide that too much. But, Brendan, one thing, just final point to you, one thing that people don't seem to want to talk about, least of all Sir Keir Starmer, is that apparently in the year running up to the election, there was a record number of mergers and acquisitions, right, from businesses, i.e. people with a bit of wealth that thought they could sell off their businesses and coin it in before we get a Labour government. So that all happened. And now we're expecting a record number of millionaires, 9,500 actually, to leave Britain within a year. Who is paying all this tax? Who's going to pay it now? Because it's going to be us, isn't it? It's going to be us.
Well, of course, the Chancellor will be outlining her plans in the budget. But all I would say, Patrick, on the question of how we ensure those people that have created businesses and created large wealth stay in this country is through a competitive tax system. Now, Labour have said they will not increase a number of taxes. Now, what I think we need to be doing, and I think I've said this on your show before, and this is where I think we will all agree, is making the UK the #1 place to invest and do business. But to get to that point where you can start lowering taxes, you've got to bring public spending under control. And at the moment in this country, the state consumes far too much spending in this country. I think we're at 50% of total spend in this country done by the government, which is enormous. That is not sustainable. And so by starting with these difficult decisions, like reducing winter fuel payments, you start to get that under control. And that's what Labour, I think, need to continue to do.
All right, both of you, thank you very much. We asked for a head-to-head. We got a head-to-head. This former Tory MP Miriam Cates, there, Labour councillor as well, CEO of the Independent Business Network. Brendan Chilton, both of you, always a pleasure. Right, who do you agree with? Is the Prime Minister lying about the state of the economy? Spade on X says, why wasn't Liz Truss allowed to let things get worse before they got better? Yes, OK, all right. Optics, I think. Simon on X says, if his lips move, he's lying. Right, OK. John says, Starmer must go, please help. Right, not a huge amount of chlorine in that swimming pool there, but there we are. Your verdict is now in. 93% of you think that the Prime Minister is lying about the state of the economy. 7% of you say he isn't. Coming up, the British Medical Association is actually facing a revolt now over its extreme stance on puberty blockers, especially for kids. I'm actually going to speak to a nurse who is fighting back against trans ideology in our health service. This, I think, is a rare win for common sense amongst NHS staff, so I'll bring that to you. But next, Keir Starmer, well, he arrogantly dismissed serious cronyism allegations, didn't he?
Not really going to take lectures on this from the people who dragged our country so far down in the last few years.
But will that flippant response get him out of trouble? Former LBC political editor is live and he's next.
Good evening. From the Met Office, here's your latest GB News weather update. Whilst there is still a bit of rain around for some of us, across parts of the southeast, we're looking ahead to some hot weather tomorrow. That's because we're staying ahead of the front that's lingering across parts of the UK at the moment in the southeast, and so some warm or hot air pushing its way in. But where we're under the front as we go through this evening and overnight, there will be some more cloud and some rain. So particularly across parts of northern England, southern Scotland, but also Wales and the southwest later on, seeing some rain as well. Also some patches of mist and fog here. In the southeast, because of that warmer, hotter air, temperatures aren't going to drop a huge amount tonight, and in fact even further north, not turning particularly chilly because of the cloud and some showery rain across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. So across Scotland, first thing, yes, there may be some heavier showery bursts perhaps clearing away, but on the whole for many it's starting largely dry, but some showers quickly moving into the far west of Scotland. Also the far west of Northern Ireland having some showers but drier further east, and then that front lingering across northern England bringing a damp start to the day here for some, and down western parts of Wales and southwest England also a bit of wet weather here. Further east though, lots of dry sunny weather to start the day tomorrow, particularly across the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast, and here it's going to stay largely fine through much of the day. Across the southwest, any rain's likely to break up, and so it's going to turn dry here. Meanwhile, across Scotland and Northern Ireland, heavy showery rain pushing its way in from the west. In the southeast, temperatures are going to be higher than today, highs of around 28 or 29 Celsius. As we go into Thursday, there will be more showers across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, perhaps northern and western England and Wales as well. But further south and east, you have a greater chance of staying dry with plenty of fine sunny weather. Temperatures won't be quite as high as tomorrow, but nonetheless feeling pleasantly warm in the sunshine, and there's more fine settled weather to come for most of us as we go through the end of the week. Bye-bye.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Now, Keir Starmer attempted to dismiss all accusations of cronyism at the heart of government after several Labour loyalists landed top civil service jobs. Have a look at this.
Most of these allegations and accusations are coming from the very people that dragged our country down in the first place. So you'll forgive me if I take that approach to it. But I'm not really going to take lectures on this from the people who dragged our country so far down in the last few years. Thank you.
Well, he can say that all he wants, but the problem isn't going away. And I'm joined now by former LBC political editor Theo Usherwood. Theo, thank you very, very much. I mean, there are quite serious allegations, aren't there?
There are serious allegations, and there does seem to be a tacit admission that something has gone wrong on a couple of them. Well, particularly Ian Caulfield. Now, he was appointed, he's an former investment banker, and he was appointed to a civil service role, a temporary civil service role, to promote an investment summit in the UK, and it was for the Treasury. And he donated a sum of money to the Labour Party. And now he's been downgraded to an unpaid voluntary role, and it's no longer a paid position after following new civil service advice. Now, Labour haven't said what that advice is, but the advice has changed, and that role has now been downgraded. The other particular, I think, the really difficult one actually is Lord Wahid Ali. Now, he's a former, well, he still is a TV mogul, millionaire mogul, and donated a lot of money to Keir Starmer's campaign and also to the Labour Party more generally, including £10,000 to Liam Conlon, who is the son of Sue Gray, Keir Starmer's chief of staff. And he was given a AAA all-access pass to Downing Street. And that's particularly problematic because if you have somebody with access to power, then you need to know what their job is. And so the reason the rules exist is not just to protect the British public and journalists, so we all know what the rules are and who's there and who's advising the Prime Minister. The rules are also there to protect the Prime Minister and his Chief of Staff and his team from accusations that people are able to flit in and out of Downing Street and provide advice, and we don't know who's there. Because when you have a democracy, it's not just about voting. We all accept that the Prime Minister can't do his job by himself, and he or her or herself, or that he needs a cabinet. He's going to need advisors. But the point is, we know who those advisors are. We know who is in the cabinet. We know who is on the front bench. We know who has the ear of the Prime Minister. It's all published. And it's very worrying when you don't know exactly who is in the building.
It's unusual, because this is the thing, it got me thinking this about, well, actually, is this just a story now? How unusual is it that someone like Lord Ali would be given that AAA pass, you said that?
Now, they've said it was a temporary pass just to help with the transition, but it's very unusual. And when I was talking to a friend of mine on the Conservative side, and we were talking about an individual called Dougie Smith, and he was given a pass to Downing Street without a defined role within Rishi Sunak's administration, and we didn't know exactly why he was in the building or what he was doing or what advice he was providing. But actually, the person who I was speaking with pointed out to me, Dougie Smith didn't give any money to the Conservative Party. He didn't buy any suits. He didn't buy any glasses. Look, it's perfectly plausible, Patrick, and I think we should be clear on this, that that Lord Wahid Ali may have, he's got expertise and he may have been in there for perfectly legitimate reasons. But the rules are there, so we know, or what you might say, Keir Starmer says he hasn't broken the rules, but the expectations are there, so we know why he's in Downing Street and what he's doing in Downing Street. And if he needs a role advising the Prime Minister, then the Prime Minister should just give him a role in the shadow on his front bench.
Yeah, and I think as well, you said it, excuse me, with Ian Caulfield, it does look a little bit odd again. It's that he's now kind of been withdrawn slightly. It's the smell test, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is.
It's the smell test. We're going to whiz on now, talk about another big issue, right? So, well, lawless Britain, really, isn't it? A very simple sorry, apparently, might be enough to get you off a violent crime. So that's because police are increasingly letting knife and, incredibly awfully, sex offenders escape prosecution if they apologise in what's been described as a community resolution. So more than 147,000 people accused of offences, including sex crimes, violence, weapons possession, they can be let off with just an apology. No criminal record. That was in the year to March. So Dr Alison Haidari of the Police Chiefs Council lead for out-of-court resolution said, "We've made it clear that out-of-court disposals are not to be used in serious cases. Officers take into consideration all circumstances of a case. Fine, but I think it will lead a lot of people to think, well, a weapons-based violent sex offence is probably quite serious." But go on, I mean, this presumably has to stop, does it?
Yeah. It's a question of how. Yeah. So obviously we heard today there's just 100 places left in male prisons across the estate, the prison estate. And I was speaking to Charlie Taylor, who's the Chief Inspector of Prisons, a couple of weeks ago, and he was making the point to me that the prison system's like a bathtub, and you can either let the plug out or you can turn the taps off. And if you let the plug out, then you're going to release prisoners early, and if you turn the taps off, then you just stop going. You're going to not put people into prison who've committed serious offences and probably should be in prison. But the system is full, and Keir Starmer, he was saying that would have happened whoever won the election. So it's a very difficult one. But I think what's noticeable about these numbers, and it's not just you can build this as a sort of pressure on the prison system, but if you look at the numbers, we're talking about 102,000 of these cases. And the pressure would be, you would imagine, with numbers like that, not just on the prison system, but when a resolution, there's no court case. Yep. So you're then looking at the lawyers you would need to prosecute these cases, the lawyers need to defend the cases where somebody decides that they want to plead not guilty and take it to trial. You're talking about a huge amount of resource to get anywhere close to reducing that number. And obviously these are serious offences. And the point of prison is not just about, a very important point of prison is to have a deterrent and to have retribution, because people, if they commit crimes, should go to prison. But it's also there as rehabilitation. If people can feel, well, actually, I can turn around and just say sorry, then they're likely to go and commit a crime again, much more likely to go and commit a crime again. But if they can get into the prison system and they can take part in courses or therapy or whatever might help them to turn their lives around, then actually there's a better chance when prisons do work that actually they come out of prison rehabilitated, and then perhaps they don't commit the crime again, and actually we see some, improved crime statistics.
Well, we certainly need improved crime statistics. It feels as though, anyway, that it can't get much worse. Now, look, Theo, you faced a little bit of a reaction, shall we say, online for some comments that appeared on Sky News over the weekend.
When you look at something like this, you just really worry about how it could be used by those on the far right to stir up hatred. To look at this and say, well, here's the justification. This is why this will be jumped on by those on the far right to say, well, there's some justification to our cause, and that's concerning. And nobody, there's ISIS is a terrorist organisation. This is plainly being treated as a terrorist attack, as it should be.
All right, so that was obviously in relation to a story that happened on Friday, which was this attack in Germany where a Syrian refugee asylum seeker killed 3 people and injured several others with a knife at a festival of diversity. Now, look, I just wanted you to
I appreciate it.
No,
I appreciate it.
Well, I hope you do, because I don't mean this in a sinister way or anything at all. No. I don't want you to be able to come back to that, because I know you a bit, and I think the implication from that was, if you just look at that clip in isolation, maybe the focus was, I hope this doesn't whip up the far right, as opposed to what an awful terrorist attack this is.
Well, I called it a terrorist attack, and I condemned it as a terrorist attack. And actually, I'm not going to turn this into some sort of personal back and forth, but the clip was edited, and at the beginning of my exchange on Sky News, I called it a terrible event that had happened in Germany. So I'm unequivocal in the fact that what had happened was a terrible event, it was a terrorist attack, and it was unfairly clipped, and I pointed that out, and you can see that on my Twitter feed. The point I was making is that if you look at what ISIS, if you read the story, there's a story in the Sunday Express, and actually I've got the Sunday Express, fine newspaper, and they just reported it factually, right? So I'm not making this is not a criticism of the Sunday Express at all. ISIS are referring to this individual, this suspect, as a soldier. It read like a recruiting leaflet for ISIS to say, here, if you do this, if you commit something like this, you're a hero, you're a soldier. But it also read, and ISIS don't care for Muslims. They have no, for law-abiding, and 99.9999% of people, Muslim people, they have no truck with this, and ISIS don't care for them, and they don't care of any reprisal attacks. What they're trying to do is they are trying to pick away at the fabric of our society, the fabric of our democracy, and they're doing that by trying to provoke a reaction. And what they were doing, you know, what that attack was about, is trying to provoke a reaction to have a you know, two extremes, where it's ISIS or on the far right. And I don't care about ISIS, and I don't care about the far right. The people I care about, the people because I love this country, right? These are the people I care about, and I don't want to get dragged into this. And I'm sure everybody at GB News would share this sentiment. I care about, let's just deal with ISIS to start off with. I care about young Muslim men who might be at home, isolated, might be on their computer screens watching YouTube, and they might see this and think, actually, I want to be a hero too, I want to be a soldier too, so I'm going to go and copy this. And I also care about young, white, working class men who might be at home, and they might get a message on their phone, a WhatsApp or Telegram, saying, look at what happened in Germany. Well, why don't you do something about it? Because if you don't do something about it, nobody will do anything about it. Why don't you come down? We're going to go and protest down at a hotel of asylum seekers. Why don't we go and have a? It might get a bit rowdy. Why don't you come down and join us at that hotel and we'll throw something at the police, or we'll try and set fire to it. We're going to take the law into our own hands. You know, Germany, this country, we are modern, mature democracies with effective intelligence services, effective police forces, effective judicial systems. The only response to an attack like this is to let those agencies get on with the job and bring individuals to justice. And if you're a young man and you're seeing that WhatsApp from a member of the far right and you're saying, come down and take part in this, and you go and take part in that you go and take part in that right, you're a member of the far right and you're a racist. But if you make the decision that actually that isn't the answer, that's not the way to do things, and actually you're a law-abiding citizen, and yes, you're worried about immigration, and yes, you're worried about the fact we're spending £7 million a day on asylum seeker hotels, and yes, you're worried about the fact that there are small boats crossings. You could be worried about all those things, but if you stay at home and you say, actually, I'm not going to take part in the violence, I'm not going to go and attack a hotel, I'm not going to go and throw stuff at the police, then you're not a racist, and you're not a member of the far right.
In a legitimate way.
And you can voice in a legitimate way. Absolutely.
Yeah, fair enough. Theo, look, thank you. Very much.
I hope that clears it up.
Well, I think it does. And thank you for all of it, what became before that as well. All right, so that was Theo Wood, the former political editor at LBC. Coming up, the British Medical Association is facing a revolt now over gender ideology. I'm going to get stuck into that very shortly. Stay tuned.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Paul Spires is a much-loved part of this South London community.
When I first got here, it was so quiet, and after 3 months, I decided to buy myself a speaker. I started playing music. Everyone loved it.
So when 200 residents from Beckenham chipped in more than £3,000 to send a sweeper on a summer break to Portugal, it was a moment of great local spirit.
I'm overwhelmed with it. I'm just here to do a job to best of my ability, and The way they've reacted is brilliant.
Lisa Knight, an estate agent, said she started the campaign after becoming friends with Mr Spears.
Last Monday, I bumped into him after work. It was a 30-degree day and he'd been working all day. So we stood and had a chat like we often do. And he explained to me that it was his birthday on Tuesday and he wanted to save up to go to Portugal because he's only ever been abroad once for his 60th birthday. And after he left, I decided to make the GoFundMe. So we shared it on the local Beckenham Appreciation Group on Facebook, which is huge, and it just flew away.
But Mr Spears was unable to take the trip due to his employer's rules on accepting gifts. A solution appeared when a travel company spotted an opportunity to help out.
onthebeach.com had an amazing idea to run a competition whereby Paul would be the winner. He had to be aged between the age of 62 and 64, be loved in Beckenham, have the surname Spears and love Elvis, and so he still gets to go on holiday.
Viola have matched that £3,000 to donated to who I have wanted nominated, and obviously cancer research, which they've already done.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
OK, welcome back. So, the British Medical Association, loads of bad headlines for being out on strike all the time. But now, a load of their members are revolting. Why? Well, because that cabal at the top of the BMA have decided to reject the CAS report, and the people underneath them are saying, well, hang on a minute, we don't really agree with the idea of giving puberty blockers to kids. Can you just stop it? Joining me now is a nurse who is waging her own fight back against transgender ideology in the NHS after her trust allowed biological men in women's changing rooms. It's Lisa Lockie. Lisa, thank you very much. I'm sorry that we've been a bit squeezed for time here because of our last guest,
That's fine.
What does this speak to now, do you think? Is there a change of ideology taking place amongst staff in the NHS?
Who knows? It seems to be some people are either on one side or the other. It seems to be they're either all for it or dead against it. To be honest, I'm not in either camp. I'm not against transgender people. I just want a policy sorted out in our trust in the NHS to stop the self-ID situation.
That's because you've got a man using your changing rooms, is that right?
Yeah.
Is that still happening?
So yeah, we've been complaining about it for quite a while, and I think our trust they'd ignored us for so long that we've kind of had to consult a legal team, and so we've taken it further. So we're waiting. We've got a procedural hearing in November. But since I last spoke to you, which is like a couple of months ago now, we've had no support from the trust, none at all. They've supported the transgender person. The transgender person is still using the female changing room. We are now in a cupboard. We've just been given some lockers. There's about half a dozen of them. I think 2 of them don't actually lock, don't work. But yeah, so we've kind of been we've had no support. The transgender person was given they were given special leave because of the stress. We've also felt very stressed throughout this whole situation, but we just haven't been afforded the same support, unfortunately.
All right.
So.
Well, look, Lisa, I mean, it's good to touch base with you again. I am very sorry that we've been a bit squeezed, but I would love to talk to you again. And I think, actually, what you've said there has successfully managed to summarise maybe the way that the people at the top of the NHS sometimes, unfortunately, think about it. That's the end of this hour. When I come back, we've got a bit of two-tier over the old Notting Hill Carnival. Stay tuned.
That
feeling inside? From Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. From the Met Office, here's your latest GB News weather update. Whilst there is still a bit of rain around for some of us across parts of the southeast, we're looking ahead to some hot weather tomorrow. That's because we're staying ahead of the front that's lingering across parts of the UK at the moment in the southeast, and so some warm or hot air pushing its way in. But where we're under the front as we go through this evening and overnight, there will be some more cloud and some rain. So particularly across parts of northern England, southern Scotland, but also Wales and the southwest later on, seeing some rain as well. Also some patches of mist and fog here. In the southeast, because of that warmer, hotter air, temperatures aren't going to drop a huge amount tonight, and in fact even further north, not turning particularly chilly because of the cloud and some showery rain across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. So across Scotland, first thing, yes, there may be some heavier showery bursts perhaps clearing away, but on the whole for many it's starting largely dry, but some showers quickly moving into the far west of Scotland. Also the far west of Northern Ireland having some showers but drier further east, and then that front lingering across northern England bringing a damp start to the day here for some, and down western parts of Wales and southwest England also a bit of wet weather here. Further east though, lots of dry sunny weather to start the day tomorrow, particularly across the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast, and here it's going to stay largely fine through much of the day. Across the southwest, any rain's likely to break up, and so it's going to turn dry here. Meanwhile, across Scotland and Northern Ireland, heavy showery rain pushing its way in from the west. In the southeast, temperatures are going to be higher than today, highs of around 28 or 29 Celsius. As we go into Thursday, there will be more showers across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, perhaps northern and western England and Wales as well. But further south and east, you have a greater chance of staying dry with plenty of fine sunny weather. Temperatures won't be quite as high as tomorrow, but nonetheless feeling pleasantly warm in the sunshine, and there's more fine settled weather to come for most of us as we go through the end of the week. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could win an incredible £30,000 in cash. And you could be getting that winning call from us to tell you that you're our next Great British Giveaway winner.
I can't believe this.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon.
I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh, you shocked me. I never won a penny in my life.
If I was there, I'll buy you a drink.
Get your entry in now for another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash. Text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight, guns, knives, drugs and 60 emergency workers assaulted at Notting Hill Carnival.
A mindless minority of thugs, and I will not listen to those who exploit grieving families and disrespect local communities.
No, that's not about Notting Hill. He's not said a word about that. That is Keir Starmer only caring about the far right. Is this yet more two-tier Keir? Also,
There is a budget coming in October, and it's going to be painful.
Great. His economic promises are crumbling. Did Keir Starmer lie to get elected? I have got some big breaking news for you, bang on the dot at 10:30 p.m. tonight. It does involve Brexit, but that's all I'm allowed to say for now. But I reckon it might get you all very, very worked up, so stay tuned. Also, darts is bringing back Walk On Girls. Yes, a victory for common sense and...
Red Cross and Red Crescent teams are delivering crucial support, helping people survive the toughest situations.
Tough situations like being misgendered, apparently. I'll tell you how the Red Cross has gone full woke. On my panel tonight, it's columnist and broadcaster Esther Kraku, the director of the Centre of Migration and Economic Prosperity, Stephen Wolfe, and journalist Jonathan Liss. And can you guess what happens when this bear finally snaps? Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Keir Starmer is not on your side. Next.
Patrick, thank you. The top stories. The Prime Minister has arrived in Germany hoping to strengthen ties with the country. And here he is, pictured with the British ambassador to Germany, Jill Gallard, near the Brandenburg Gate in Berlin. Patrick will be speaking with GB News' political editor, Christopher Hope, on this in more detail this hour. Well, earlier, Sir Keir Starmer warned the October budget will be painful, but he says the country will have to accept short-term pain for long-term good. During his speech outside Number 10 this morning, Sir Keir Starmer warned things will get worse before they get better. And he said next week's return to Parliament will not be business as usual. He also addressed the recent riots, saying they showed the cracks in our society after 14 years of populism and failure. The Prime Minister also reiterated economic growth is the government's top priority. In other news, the Ministry of Justice has confirmed that only 100 spaces are left in male prisons in England and Wales. It comes as the number of people sent to prison has reached record levels. In July, the government set out legislation to reduce the amount of time inmates must spend in jail before they're automatically released, from 50% of their sentence to 40%, in a bid to manage overcrowding. A Ministry of Justice spokesperson said the new government inherited a justice system in crisis and has been forced into taking difficult but necessary action to ensure we can keep locking up dangerous criminals and protect the public. A man's been charged with murder after officers stopped him at Notting Hill Carnival. Detectives had issued an appeal to locate Kamar Williams, who was wanted in connection with the fatal stabbing of a 53-year-old man. He'll appear in court tomorrow. That's as 3 men have been arrested over the stabbing of a 32-year-old mother at Notting Hill Carnival, which left her in a critical condition. The woman was attending the family day on Sunday with her young child when she was attacked. The Metropolitan Police says it appears she became caught up in the middle of an altercation between 2 groups of men, but it's unclear if they were known to her. In total, 349 arrests were made over the Carnival weekend for a range of offences, including violence, sexual assaults and 60 attacks on police officers. And after lots of speculation, British pop band Oasis are officially reuniting nearly 15 years after they split. Liam and Noel Gallagher are getting back together for Oasis' long-awaited reunion with a worldwide tour next year. Oasis, who released their chart-topping album Definitely Maybe around 3 decades ago, announced the series of dates kicking off their tour in Cardiff. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Today, we saw yet more evidence of two-tier Keir. Around 60 emergency workers were violently attacked by thugs and yobs at Notting Hill Carnival. That's on top of gun offences, multiple stabbings, the open, brazen drug use and the utter filth. There was some Ring doorbell footage here, which is reportedly from over the weekend, which does show people using someone's front stoop as a toilet. And that went on and on and on. Quite a few people did that, actually. Not just that particular lady there. There's another one there. Lovely stuff. Yep, that's just the things you see at Carnival, isn't it, really, in some ways? Disgusting behaviour, as Carnival revellers there just use a stairwell as a toilet. All right, anyway. Sir Keir Starmer has said nothing about any of that. 61 emergency workers assaulted. Not a word. A mother stabbed in front of her young child. Not a word. Remember when he said this about the riots after Southport?
400 people now have been arrested, 100 have been charged, some in relation to online activity, and a number of them are already in court. And I'm now expecting substantive sentencing before the end of this week. That should send a very powerful message to anybody involved, either directly or online.
So why will this Labour Prime Minister not fast-track prosecutions for people who beat up emergency workers at Carnival over the weekend? I wonder why. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper tweeted this on August the 11th. She said, there we go, police officers show great bravery keeping us safe. It's a disgrace they were subjected to violent attacks. It's time to restore respect for the police. Well, she was absolutely silent today. Why? Was it the wrong kind of people who attacked the police for you? Was it Home Secretary? Are you too afraid of being called a racist? And the media wants to cover it up, OK? We have had two absolute corkers here from Sky News.
The atmosphere continues really to be brilliant, to be a party atmosphere. But of course we know, as we heard from the police yesterday, and as we've seen sadly in recent years, that occasionally amongst the nearly 1 million people who show up, there are stabbings, there is knife crime. There were 2 men yesterday and a woman stabbed. The woman, a 32-year-old, now in hospital in a life-threatening condition. She was here yesterday with her child, and so the police have to balance that, keeping people safe, maintaining order on the streets, but also allowing people to have a great time.
Yeah, and then this today as well, as several people are fighting for their lives in hospital.
You've got around 1 million people who would have attended that weekend. I was certainly one of them. I was here on the Sunday, and the vibe that I certainly picked up was one that was celebratory and quite cathartic, really, following the racist riots that we've seen in the country.
Yeah, it's all just largely peaceful stabbings, isn't it? Largely peaceful. Yesterday alone, there were 230 arrests, 49 weapons were seized, 2 gun offences, 37 emergency workers assaulted, multiple sexual offences, drugs, drugs, drugs. But it doesn't matter, does it? Because now, even if you do commit a sexual offence, you can just say sorry in Britain and you'll avoid prison. How can it not be two-tier from Sir Keir? Where's the press conference? Where's the condemnation? Where's the tweet from the Home Office telling everyone that they've already arrested is already guilty? Where are the tweets from the police publishing the home addresses of people that they've arrested? People don't feel safe because of the stuff that we saw over the last 2 days. And we have a Prime Minister who won't even acknowledge it. Do you think he's really on your side? Let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. Columnist and broadcaster Esther Krakow. We've got the Director for the Centre of Migration and Economic Prosperity. It is, of course, the wonderful Stephen Wolfe. And we're joined by journalist Jonathan Liss. Esther, I'll start with you. I mean, that is, I think, just overtly two-tier, isn't it? I mean, why is he not even mentioning any of those things? Those people who attacked emergency workers there, should they not be fast-tracked through the courts in the same way the others were?
I mean, I get it, because obviously they have committed crimes and then they should face the full force of the law. I think Keir Starmer's logic is they're not the far right. This is 1 day. We know it's, well, 2 days. We know that it's going to end. So there are clearly limits to this. But we have this conversation about Notting Hill Carnival every single year. We have the conversation about the multiple arrests, the stabbings, the sexual assaults and all of that. And usually what we see is we have people saying, don't let that overshadow, you know, this shining example of multiculturalism excelling in Britain and all of that. And then the other side that say this is, you know, the largest street festival in Europe, over 1 million people. This is actually operationally a success for the Metropolitan Police. But I think even in the wider context, it's still frustrating because it's become the norm. It's like, oh, it's all great, but, you know, a few people were stabbed. But don't worry. Don't worry, because, you know, it's still operationally successful. When you get people used to the idea that a few stabbings is not one too many, but actually should be the norm, that's when they get frustrated. No one is talking about, you know, cancelling Notting Hill Carnival, because I don't think that's...
No, you couldn't even if you wanted to, and I don't want to see it.
But the point is, we shouldn't normalise sexual assault, 230 arrests, people getting stabbed, all of that.
It's not a nice day
and there
out,
are
is it?
conversations. Look, I talk to people, particularly older Brits of Caribbean heritage, and they say the carnival that they knew in the 70s and 80s is very different now. It's full of debauchery, people twerking on bus stops, people peeing in in front of people's houses, all of these things. And we can't even have a conversation about actually good behaviour. Right? What does good behaviour look like? I dropped my cousin off at the carnival a few years ago, and I said, if I see you twerking on a bus stop, I will drag you from there and send you to the village.
What's wrong with twerking?
Why are you twerking on the bus stop? That's not the household. She doesn't come from a household where bearing your bum cheeks in public for the world to see is acceptable behaviour. That's not how we raised her.
It is if you're on Sky.
I don't think that twerking is on par with knife crime.
No, I'm not calling it on par, but I'm talking about a general criminality and general bad behaviour. I don't think that's a good thing at all. There are kids there. Why should kids steal people's bum cheeks?
Stephen, I'll just ask you this now, right. This was a perfect opportunity for Keir Starmer or the Home Secretary to say thank you very, very much to the police who had to put up with an unacceptable amount of law-breaking and disorder and violence, and anybody who is found to have attacked an emergency worker at Notting Hill Carnival will face the full force of the law. Instead, they said nothing.
Well, do Notting Hill gear, nothing from Keir. Get excessive beer, nothing from Keir. Commit fear, nothing from Keir, as long as it's from Notting Hill. And that's the message he's sending. He's sending a very two-tier system, as you said once again. Here we are. If you complain about immigration in this country, the full force of the law, and more scarily, I expect serious sentences. I expect serious sentences coming down from the judiciary. But here, as you said, the number of arrests, which in a par were those of the first couple of days of the riots of Notting Hill, were exactly the same. I expected him to be saying exactly the same. We will be having our courts open tonight, and I expect serious
because that would stop it happening again this year. To Esther's point about this happening every single year.
And we have this conversation all the time.
Even the police officer, even one of the police officers at the Met said he's sick and tired of saying every single year there's been this level of violence. Well, the way to stop it would suppose some kind of deterrent, wouldn't it? I do put it to you, Jonathan, that
put it in Wembley.
maybe they're too afraid of being called racist to actually speak out against this shocking level of violence.
Talking about it, I just want to clarify a point with Stephen. People throwing bricks at mosques and trying to incinerate asylum seekers are not complaining about migration. Complaining about migration is not going to get you...
exactly all of the
Complaining about migration is not going to get you a prison sentence.
Some of the tweets did.
No, I'm sorry.
Some of the tweets did. The guy that got done yesterday wearing a flag and he stood there through an English flag and he got done.
Calling for mosques to be burned down is not complaining about migration. And it doesn't serve your... I'm not saying he did it, but it doesn't serve your cause to downplay what people are actually saying and doing, and that was not the same as Notting Hill. Not the same.
I think the point here is people are being arrested online for sort of misspeaking or for wrongthink, but you have people assaulting emergency workers and the Prime Minister saying nothing.
And my point was there is a distinction. There are levels, and he should be saying exactly the same.
As you pointed out, what happened during the riots is in the context of an unfolding national emergency where we didn't know how long...
national emergency, Jonathan.
It was, as Esther herself has just pointed out, this was... Notting Hill is an event. The Prime Minister talking about it, look, I'm not in charge of the Prime Minister's comms. I think it would have been completely acceptable to put out a statement. I think it would have been completely acceptable for him or Yvette Cooper to put out a tweet. They didn't, because, it's a police matter. In the riots, there's something that's happening, and it's obviously more political during the riots.
It's acceptable. That's the point. If you're going to try and make people feel safe in this country, if you're going to say we're not tolerating assault on emergency workers or any kind of bad behaviour, which we can all agree on, it doesn't look good when you only comment on it in one instance.
So I think, can I make a really important point, I think, which is that, of course, we need to condemn violence in Notting Hill and the scale of disorder. I don't think... but also we have to take into account the sheer number of people who are there.
We're not the Prime Minister. Us condemning
it's a separate point, though. If you look at Royal Ascot, there were 35 arrests at Royal Ascot this year. If you look at Glastonbury, there were 36 arrests at Glastonbury.
But I didn't see mass knifings attacking
proportionally, actually, it's almost as many arrests.
Well, it depends. It's the type of arrest, though. But this is the thing. The types of arrests at Glastonbury and Royal Ascot is not stabbing and sexual assault.
There are sexual assaults at Glastonbury every year. There are sexual assaults.
You see at Glastonbury are for people snorting cocaine, which I don't agree with.
There are also sexual assaults committed at Glastonbury.
But the scale is completely different. You're comparing apples and oranges. My argument is, if Keir Starmer is going to be the man of law and order, the man who's going to keep Britain safe. If you're going to say that people should be arrested online for wrong speak or for tweeting things you don't like or whatever...
It's not wrong speak, Esther. You make it sound Orwellian. It's not...
Why wouldn't you just do it? Is it not as plain and simple as, actually, we did have one...
Condemn them both.
We had an awful situation involving some people who were definitely far-right. We also had a load of other people who were just very concerned, right? But most of those people were white, and we had a Prime Minister who felt readily available calling all of those people out and calling them all sorts of names. And then, unfortunately, over the course of the weekend, we had a festival where I would say the majority of people there were ethnic minorities, and Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper have not wanted to call out any criminality.
And nor would we see from the Mayor of London. We didn't see it from Mayor of London as well. We didn't see it from any councillors. We didn't see it from the Labour. There was none of the media doing the same sort of thing. And so it's becoming very clear to people in society, whether we like it or not, that there does seem to be a very distinct element of policing, politicisation and commentary when it only relates to poor white working.
I would just vociferously disagree with you on that point, and I'm sure that everyone who's been arrested will face criminal, go through the same judicial proceedings as anyone else. And I really do have to take issue with this point, Patrick, about people complaining about migration. If you're joining a riot, you're not complaining. There are legitimate ways to complain and to protest and to express your views. Rioting is not one of them. Criminal damage is not one of them.
All right, OK, fine. Look, the overarching point that I'm trying to make with this is that there are two offences there that, for me, on paper at least, were quite similar. The attack of an emergency worker, the assault of an emergency worker. And I think one of them was highlighted a lot more than the ones that we saw over the weekend, which, as far as I can tell, weren't particularly highlighted at all. But it's a range of views there. Thank you very much for it. Coming up, we bring you a potentially big, actually, I think almost definitely massive Brexit announcement, which I will, for some ridiculous reason, only be allowed to talk to you about at 10:30, despite the fact that I've known about what it is all day. But anyway, walk-on girls are returning to the Ocky to darts. They're doing a 180 on the old ban of the old walk-on girls practice. Esther seems to like that remarkably. There you go. All right, fantastic. Well, is this a victory for common sense? We'll debate that after I bring you the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. But first, after Keir Starmer warned things will get worse before they got better, why has his message of hope changed so drastically since he won the election? Did he lie to get your vote? Stay tuned.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo, from 11, only on GB News.
A new 9-storey high mural celebrating Jewish life in Britain's capital has been unveiled in Finchley Road. The mural's artist, Leon Fenster, joins me now. Leon, welcome to GB News. Congratulations on the work. Tell me a little bit about the concept and how you put it together.
Mm-hmm. Well, all of my artworks are kind of essentially storytelling. So trying to pull back the curtain on some specific world that I can reveal, whether that's the world of a particular family, of a community, of an organisation, of a city. And in this case, the challenge was how to depict in a single artwork the entire story of Jews in the city of London. I don't really plan too much. I start somewhere, one thing leads to the next, to the next, to the next, the way we remember the world in our dreams and our memories. And then after a few months, it was ready and we put it up onto the wall.
Give me an idea of the dimensions of this thing. We've talked about it being 7 stories high.
Right.
Also looks like it's pretty broad.
The wall is 14 metres wide, and it's to the top of the artwork is 26 metres. So definitely my largest yet, I would say.
I didn't know Benjamin Disraeli had a bar mitzvah.
He did not. He made a point of not having one. These artworks, there's this kind of mischievous sense of humour. So actually, Benjamin Disraeli's father left Bevis Mark Synagogue after an argument and immediately had his children baptised.
Yes.
Just a couple of months before Benjamin Disraeli's bar mitzvah would have been. So I'm sort of slightly cheekily imagining him finally getting to have the bar mitzvah he never had. He might not be too happy about this, to be honest.
Because after all, Benjamin Disraeli would not have been Prime Minister in that era.
Quite.
Has he been willing to attest to the Church of England?
That's right, absolutely. So that's why there's something slightly cheeky about it. Exactly.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Tomorrow's front pages are coming next, as well as a big Brexit announcement that I think is going to wind you all up somewhat. But first, Keir Starmer filled the nation with dread rather than hope at his press conference earlier today.
I will be honest with you. There is a budget coming in October, and it's going to be painful. We have no other choice, given the situation that we're in. Those with the broadest shoulders should bear the heavier burden.
Good grief. I mean, if that doesn't make you want to leave the country, then nothing will. What's happened to his promise of hope during the election? Change. To discuss this, I'm joined by Labour Party activist Susie Stride. Susie, thank you very much. Well, turns out Chuckles there was lying to us to get your vote, wasn't he?
No, I don't think so. I think a great leader is honest and truthful. I think people are tired, aren't they, of politicians that say one thing, do another thing. I think, Keir Starmer is a straight-talking guy, and he's just saying we haven't inherited a difficult economic situation. We're going to be truthful about that. And I think people want to hear the reality. That is the reality. I agree with you. I'm sure there is this gloomy tone to that. But I keep saying this. We've got to give 2 months in office is not enough to have yet the impact that we're going to have. I actually do think there is hope, and I do think people feel there is a different atmosphere in the country. I think people do feel that, but maybe you don't feel that.
Not really, Susie. I like your optimism, but no, I don't. I'll be honest with you, no, I don't really feel. But can I just say to you, look, I understand this idea of we've inherited. It's straight out of the playbook. Look at the mess I've inherited. It's far worse than I ever thought it is. Oh, this is going to take more cleaning up than ever. But there are some decisions he has made, and I'm just going to play a couple of little clips here because this was one of him talking about pensions, right? So this is Keir Starmer earlier talking about the pensioners.
Didn't want to means test the winter fuel payment, but it was a choice that we had to make. But let me be clear, I'm going to be really tough about this with the unions, as I'm being tough with everybody else, because this is part of the work we have to do.
Well, so those clips side by side there, it's him talking about the pensioners and the winter fuel versus him being quite tough on the unions despite giving them whopping great big pay rises. I mean, that has caused partly our economic mess, and he is responsible for that, and he's not really telling us about that, is he?
Yeah, I just don't think that's true. Sorry, most economists in this country would say 14 years of a Conservative government have led to where we are. 2 months of a Labour government have not led to where we are. Now, if we have this conversation in 12 months' time and we are not in a better place, I'm happy to eat some humble pie. You can replay this clip. I don't feel we're going to be in the same place in 12 months' time. 14 years of Conservative government is where we are now. It's like trying to blame Keir Starmer for the fact we've got sewage in our rivers. We have sewage in our rivers because the Tories did not clamp down and properly regulate those companies, which we are going to do. So, I agree with you in some ways. I watched that speech. Yeah, it doesn't, and he's wearing quite a dark suit as well. It seems a bit funeral-like. I just think he's trying to be refreshing. He's trying to be truthful. He's having that integrity of saying, actually, this is where the country's at the moment. But we are going to build homes. We are going to deal with NHS waiting lists. We are going to deal with sewage being pumped into our rivers, which actually has annoyed a whole lot of people, and so it should do. And I think there is going to be change.
But it's not the way to sell Britain, though, Susie. You know, he was basically there. So, well, he literally said things are going to get worse before they get better. And I'm asking you to come with me on this journey, whilst you might have to dig deep and pay a bit more to begin with, but then we'll emerge into the sunlit uplands of Keir Starmer's Britain later on. But the way he said it, it was just like, honestly, it made me want to leave the country. And just on that note, Susie, 9.5 millionaires are set to leave the country within a year. And there was a record number, apparently, of mergers and acquisitions of businesses in the run-up to the election. So people with a bit of wealth and a bit of money looking to cash in before we had a Labour government. If you did have a bit of money, i.e. the kind of person who's probably going to end up paying more tax and get us all out of this hole, you'd listen to that. If you weren't leaving already, you would be now, wouldn't you? So who's going to pay for all of this stuff? You know, Mr. Negative here, you know, moaning about how bad the country is. Why would anyone with a bit of money stick around?
I think we've already shown that the business community is on our side. You saw that in the run-up to the election. You saw these 100 businesses backing Labour. You know, you don't get that if businesses do not have confidence in a government, in a party. And I can tell you that because I can tell you what it was like under Jeremy Corbyn. And I tell you what, the business event at the Labour Party was pretty empty. And under Keir Starmer, it's packed.
I do hate to do this to you, because this is really, really shocking timing, and you were not to know this. And I had just checked Twitter in the break and did see this, so I do apologise, Susie. But the front of City AM tomorrow is City sounds alarm over tax plans. Expert warn that tax hikes will hit growth as the PM hints at pain to come. So they might have been all right with him in the run-up to the election, but I think he has lost them now.
I mean, I just don't agree with that. Sorry, I just don't. I think, you know what lost them? What lost them was Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng and their disastrous budget that said the pound nosediving, you know, which it's really important. You guys talk a lot about working people. Working people pay the cost of that. I know people with mortgages, people that haven't had holidays this summer because their mortgages have gone through the roof because of Liz Truss, who's now, you know, darting around and having the time of her life. You know, I'm sorry, but let's put responsibility where responsibility needs to be. Let's put blame where it should be. And it is not a Keir Starmer store. And I'm saying to you, and I really do believe this, that we should have hope in our hearts, because I think great things are coming for this country. Best days are coming. 100%.
But you see, this is it. You can sell it, Susie. You can sell it. We just had Chuckles there in the Downing Street garden earlier on, making me want to. Well, I won't say what we maybe want to do in case I encourage anyone else to do it. But Susie, thank you very, very much. Susie Stride, there, the Labour Party activist. All right. Well, look, OK, we've got loads coming up. I'll bring you the very first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Plus, I will take you to Berlin, where our political editor, Christopher Hope, has some breaking Brexit news for you. I don't think you're going to like it, but you should stay tuned. I will finally be able to tell you what it is in a couple of minutes' time.
Good evening. From the Met Office, here's your latest GB News weather update. Whilst there is still a bit of rain around for some of us across parts of the southeast, we're looking ahead to some hot weather tomorrow. That's because we're staying ahead of the front that's lingering across parts of the UK at the moment in the southeast, and so some warm or hot air pushing its way in. But where we're under the front as we go through this evening and overnight, there will be some more cloud and some rain. So particularly across parts of northern England, southern Scotland, but also Wales and the southwest later on, seeing some rain as well. Also some patches of mist and fog here. In the southeast, because of that warmer, hotter air, temperatures aren't going to drop a huge amount tonight, and in fact even further north, not turning particularly chilly because of the cloud and some showery rain across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. So across Scotland, first thing, yes, there may be some heavier showery bursts perhaps clearing away, but on the whole for many it's starting largely dry, but some showers quickly moving into the far west of Scotland. Also the far west of Northern Ireland having some showers but drier further east, and then that front lingering across northern England bringing a damp start to the day here for some, and down western parts of Wales and southwest England also a bit of wet weather here. Further east though, lots of dry sunny weather to start the day tomorrow, particularly across the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast, and here it's going to stay largely fine through much of the day. Across the southwest, any rain's likely to break up, and so it's going to turn dry here. Meanwhile, across Scotland and Northern Ireland, heavy showery rain pushing its way in from the west. In the southeast, temperatures are going to be higher than today, highs of around 28 or 29 Celsius. As we go into Thursday, there will be more showers across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, perhaps northern and western England and Wales as well. But further south and east, you have a greater chance of staying dry with plenty of fine sunny weather. Temperatures won't be quite as high as tomorrow, but nonetheless feeling pleasantly warm in the sunshine. And there's more fine settled weather to come for most of us as we go through the end of the week. Bye-bye.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Now it's time to bring you the very first look at some of tomorrow's newspaper front pages before I take you all the way to Berlin. So, The Independent, well, here we go. It all starts. We will turn the corner on Brexit and fix relations with the EU. The Prime Minister is in Germany now. He's going to head to France for a, quote, once-in-a-generation opportunity to strive for genuine, ambitious partnerships with Europe, these are his words, as he puts the UK on alert for a painful budget. I've got more detail for you on this shortly. The Guardian, time for the UK to turn a corner on Brexit, says Starmer. He is apparently going to be signing within the next 6 months a deal with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, focusing on defence, on trade, on immigration. This is a new Brexit deal, isn't it? The Eye, Starmer's plan for a softer Brexit starts in Germany today. Prime Minister will lay the groundwork for a, quote, better relationship. Apparently, he's going to sign this treaty. It's not a full trade deal because of Germany's EU membership, but it is expected to cover market access in science, tech, innovation. There we go. I can whiz you over to the Times as well now. German deal to, quote, turn the corner on Brexit. Starmer is meeting Olaf Scholz to discuss a new treaty. And here for us in Berlin for the breaking news that Keir Starmer is currently in Germany, making the first inroads into putting pen to paper on a brand new Brexit deal, which no, of course, was not in any manifesto and no, as yet, has not been able to be discussed in Parliament. It's Christopher Hope, our political editor. Christopher, fantastic. What's going on then?
Patrick, hiya. Welcome to Berlin. The Brandenburg Gate is behind me. Sir Keir Starmer is staying here. He's our Prime Minister. He meets with Olaf Scholz tomorrow. The idea here is to 6 months to work out a deal, a treaty with Germany, covering all sorts of areas to boost trade, deepen defence, security, increase action on illegal migration and the like. He wants this to be a model of other deals with other EU countries as we go forward under this Labour government. The PM thinks privately that it's not reversing Brexit, that other treaties are done all the time. We've been trading with our friends and neighbours on the continent for hundreds of years, and here's a case of strengthening those bonds. But there's no question that tomorrow morning, I think a lot of maybe Tory Brexiteers will be spitting out their cornflakes and dropping the marmalade, reading those headlines you read out just there, because there will be concern this is going to tie us closer and closer to the European Union, to make some wonder, well, what's the point of Brexit after all?
Well, no, indeed. And Christopher, just staying with you, I mean, some of the detail that we've been, it's quite limited at the moment, I suppose. But, we'll, as you've said, have a lot of Brexiteers spitting out their cornflakes and being very, very worried about it, and it's talking about a recalibration of our relationship with the European Union. And it covers, seemingly, quite a lot of ground. So it says he wants to turn a corner.
Yeah, so,
fine.
On that...
Go on, yeah, go on, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the news broke 4 minutes ago, Patrick. I mean, the detail there is detailed. It says here there'll be increased collaboration on market access, critical science, innovation and tech, clean energy, trade across the North Sea, supply chain resilience, energy security and green transition education, biodiversity and the environment. That is a full waterfront of most key areas you may want to talk about with another country. So Keir Starmer is here. He knows Olaf Scholz very well. I was there when they met on the last time on the margins of the NATO summit in Washington, D.C. A very warm embrace. We'll see them meet later on tomorrow. Earlier, Sir Keir Starmer was behind me at the Brandenburg Gate having a walkabout. I mean, he's clearly a person who he can do business with, and he clearly sees this deal with Germany as one to set the benchmark for other similar deals that I fully expect the UK to try and sign as we go forward through this 5-year period. What that means for Brexit, it will shake up the whole idea of what Brexit is for us as we go forward.
Yeah, exactly, and it's on that. Now, Christopher, at some point, I mean, I suppose it doesn't really matter, does it now, because there's a massive Labour majority, but at some point, will this have to be voted on in Parliament?
Treaties normally are voted on in Parliament, but it's not normally controversial because by the time they get to Parliament they've been agreed. Of course, that treaty with the EU was signed off and agreed in a rush and detail filled in later. But it may well be that we don't see any detail of what's being agreed until it's presented as a fait accompli to Parliament, and that could really stir the hornet's nest amongst Brexiteers. I mean, don't forget, Sir Keir Starmer has always said we are not going into the single market or the customs union. Those are two things are sacrosanct. The idea of sovereignty, he would say, isn't being touched by these agreements because we still remain outside of those two things. But by tying ourselves to the EU, to Germany, the biggest economy in Germany, on certain areas, some will say this is reversing Brexit in all but name, Patrick.
Well, indeed. Just one final one with you, if that's all right, Christopher, because I know you've got a busy night and no doubt a day ahead. The context of this, Keir Starmer's popularity has dropped to, I think I'm right in saying, -16 now, -17 possibly. I know Olaf Scholz has got his issues, hasn't he? Is there a wider context to this? Two quite unpopular leaders, you know, undergoing difficult times, relatively meeting to try to agree something?
It's all relative. Olaf Scholz gets on very well with Keir Starmer. He's got his own issues here in Germany. I mean, our Prime Minister, he's 7 weeks into the job. He is down 10 points, but look at the numbers. I mean, feel that majority, 171. Look at where the Tories are. They're nowhere. I think, you know, he's a relaxed Prime Minister. I was with him in the Downing Street garden earlier. I had my hand in the air for you, Patrick, to ask the questions you want answered, but he wouldn't take my question. But we'll try and keep getting those questions in and try and get him to address the concerns that we have at GB News.
Look, Christopher, just on that, now you probably won't be able to see this because I don't know what your setup is exactly like there, but we are showing your tweet here. So this is you earlier with your hand in the air, you know, and I think, Christopher, what you did wrong there, if you don't mind me telling you, right? I think you made it very obvious that you were Christopher Hope from GB News. So my team here, what we did was we came up with a cunning plan for you, Christopher, when you're out there and you're going to ask him a question tomorrow. We think you should dress like that. There is Christopher Hope there, dressed in full German lederhosen, OK? And he will not know it's you. He will think you're a local reporter, OK? And he will go to you to get a good bit of local press in Berlin. And then you rip the lederhosen off and you say, have you thought about tackling immigration, Prime Minister? Oh, we've lost his sound. He's ripped his mic off.
I'm on the road.
He's back. Go on, Christopher. Carry on.
That's why you earn the big bucks, Patrick Christys. I'm on the road here earning a corn, but you're back there with your big ideas. You know, it's hard enough making a living here as a reporter.
Oh, brilliant, Christopher. Look, good luck. Thank you for everything that you do, and keep going because you do great work for us here at GB News. And good luck in Berlin. All right, that's Christopher Hope. They're our political editor at the Brandenburg Gate. Right, OK. So let's get stuck into this then. So it appears. Look, Stephen, we'll start with you on this. It appears we're about to get a much softer Brexit.
Well, we've had BNO for so long time, Brexit in name only, ever since Theresa May, and there's very much a huge element of what's happened in our politics about leaving the European Union that didn't really result in a proper Brexit. Yes, we left the Parliament, yes, we left the Commission, but the very fact that we stayed pretty much tied in so many ways, even through the treaty, to EU rules and regulations, that's the fundamental element of whether we can go off on our own route. And what will become clear, and it's already listening to way Christopher's explained this in that press release, this is all about tying up energy and the car industry between Germany and the UK.
But is that a bad thing? You know,
no, it's not. It's not a bad. It's not a bad thing. But in order to achieve that, there's going to be questions about how we align ourselves with the rules of the EU, which means removing ourselves from Parliament's decisions, going back to statutory instruments and passing it, wading through committees again, because that is the only way that we can undertake this. And that does not mean Brexit. That just means alignment to the EU through the back door.
One thing I will think is, Jonathan, you're sighing again.
Yeah, because it's complete nonsense.
Why is it nonsense?
Brexit meant leaving the European Union. No one, and my goodness, I'm having terrible triggering right now of our debates in 2016 to 2019 when I discussed this 100,000 times. But Brexit just meant leaving the European Union. There was no agreement even on
the European Union.
Well, Stephen, I wish that we'd had that question answered.
I knew what it meant.
In 2016, well, you might have.
I knew it meant that we didn't align ourselves
well, let me tell you something.
And regulations and make them on our own.
The British people didn't know, and we know that because the Brexiteers didn't know. The Brexiteers didn't know because they argued for different things.
And you worked in the European Parliament.
Some people. Stephen, let me say. Some people said that we could stay in the single market. Some people said that we would be leaving the single market. That question was never resolved in the referendum. The referendum was simply addressing the practical legal question of whether we would remain a member or not of the European Union. And only 51.8, I think, % of people actually decided to leave that. It was a compromise. And my goodness, you got pretty much everything you wanted. We left the single market and the customs union. And my side was fighting to keep both.
Fine. And now, Esther, we are about to have all of those arguments again now, aren't we?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously we have to wait for what he puts to Parliament. But what I suspect is happening is he's trying to carve out some sort of special relationship, and I know this harks back to the US, but special relationship a la EU with Germany and France, and I suspect a few other big players in the EU. Because one of the things I always said was, from its inception, the EU was too big. Right, you can't have the kind of political and economic union that you have with 27 member states with vastly different economies and with vastly different ways of working. The EU should have been restricted to the 10 largest economies in Europe, and it should have had a much more sort of reasonable economic relationship. I think that's what he's trying to gerrymander here, but there are questions of what the EU will allow. Because
why is he gerrymandering?
Because... Why
gerrymander?
Well, because it depends on what the EU is willing to agree to. Because even though he's dealing with the largest member states, they still have to agree to it. The EU is still a separate body.
Well, we're going to find out a lot more about this in the coming 6 months, because that's the length of time I think it will take to sign this. So we will have to wait and see. I think for me it does beg the question, doesn't it? You know, is this actually again just a political thing in the sense of, you know, are Germany and France more likely to now deal with a left-wing politician in a way they would never have dealt with a right-wing politician? But we're going to have to break on this now. Coming up, are darts organisers right to bring back the walk-on girls after they were banned 6 years ago? Esther, again, weirdly happy about this. We'll debate that shortly. And I'll show you what happens next here as a Russian circus act gets a grisly finale. But I'll have a few more papers first, so stay tuned.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Let's have a look at this story in the Telegraph, Charlie. And this is about Anglican Church, the Church of England, dropping the word church in favour of something a bit more modern sounding. Words such as community. Why are we afraid of the word church?
Well, that's my question. I mean, you've got to assume that they think it solves some kind of problem. But I think, you know, there are a lot of people who feel very strongly about their particular religious institution, whatever they all have different names, don't they? And if you rename one, do you have to rename all of them? Can we no longer use an individual name for different religions' community buildings?
Are you religious?
I I'm spiritual.
You sound like him. Yeah.
No, certainly.
Oh, don't get Ellie started on me.
Do I believe in a God? Yes. Do I believe in any of the particular gods that are offered to us? Still undecided.
I'm like you. I said exactly that.
You two are the same. You two are exactly
What about you, Anna? Are you particularly religious?
Well, I'm not a proper religious. I wouldn't name myself as a religious, but I really do respect religions. And we have bigger problems to think about.
Is it a sign of where we're at in this secular society?
Yes.
We're moving more and more towards that the Anglican Church feels that the only way to be relevant is to take away any reference to church going, to being religious.
I think if the substance of what you're offering is good, it doesn't matter what it's called. You know, so if people are going to find solace and peace and a place that makes them feel better, they're not going to care too much about what it's called. So I think relabeling it, rebranding it, I don't know, maybe it'll help, maybe it won't, but it's going to certainly upset a lot of people, I should think.
And people whose religion is important to them and kind of central to their lives, you can imagine.
Absolutely.
There's a reason Justin Welby is nicknamed by some quarters the Archbishop of Woke. Maybe this adds fuel to the fire, who knows?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Right, welcome back to Patrick Christys. Now, it has taken me straight back to 2016-17, Liz. In the break, the amount of Brexit guff that we were just chatting to each other. Anyway, right. Yes, if you have just joined us, Keir Starmer's currently in Berlin. It looks as though he's about to sign some kind of, well, in 6 months' time anyway, some kind of new Brexit deal, really, with Germany and possibly France. But anyway, I'm sure you'll be hearing more on that on GB News tomorrow. It's time now to give you some more front pages, so I'll do that. We're going in with the Metro. Stars align. The wait is over. Fans go crazy as Oasis reunion confirmed. Fantastic. The Daily Express. Yes, it will be painful for Britain's elderly this winter, Keir Starmer says. All right. The Daily Mail. Finally, Starmer comes clean. He'll soak middle class. So I read that right? He'll soak middle class. That's an old turn of phrase, isn't it? Am I missing something? Am I missing something here? Anyway, so Keir Starmer has been accused of plotting a tax raid on the middle classes. So basically, I think he's just going to hammer the middle class, really. But anyway, the Telegraph...
Is there still a middle class?
I wasn't even in the topic for another time. The Daily Telegraph, Starmer's tax alert for Middle England. Yeah, fine. They have decided not to go off the Keir Starmer announcement that was embargoed weirdly until 10:30 p.m, which is that there's going to be a German deal with a softer Brexit. So there you go. Those are your papers.
There's still a middle class.
Right, let me whiz on through a couple of stories that you might have missed today. Walk-on girls will return to televised darts for the first time in 6 years for October's World Seniors match play. So the World Senior Darts Tour has announced that Daniela Alfrey and Charlotte Wood will be their new ambassadors. The duo, having been the most famous walk-on girls before the practice was scrapped in 2018. After their return was announced, both Alfrey and Wood expressed their delight at coming back to the sport. Esther, you have... You have expressed a keen interest in darts.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Why?
Bring all the beautiful girls from sports back.
Well,
because here's the thing. This is my story. This is what traumatised me in my life. I went to see a boxing match 2 years ago, and there were no ring girls.
Right.
And I expressed extreme anger because I was like, I paid for the cheeks. I didn't just come to see people get beaten up. I wanted to see beautiful women with their bum cheeks hanging out, holding...
You said a minute ago that you hated that stuff.
No, wait, hold on, excuse me. I paid to see the cheeks. I paid it.
They're not related.
When it's free,
it's
free,
for
it's
someone
horrible.
else's sister to go and do that kind of work, all right?
And also, there's a difference in the quality when you pay for it versus when you are gifted free cheeks on top of a bus stop near Wembley. There's a complete difference.
All right,
anyway,
I'll take your word for it.
So, exactly.
I'll turn you the cheek. Sorry.
Don't look back in anger.
Anyway, the point is, I just don't think it's fair to rob beautiful women of work because some feminist somewhere has gotten told that they can't do the same thing. I just don't think it's fair. I think beautiful women in sports go together like
carrots and peas. Right,
exactly,
OK, fine.
Exactly.
Stephen, how do you feel about darts walk-on girls?
I don't really have a position. I think
yes, you do.
I don't mind it. I think I'm perfectly happy if they want to earn the money from it and they're enjoying the work, then let them get on with it. What I do dislike is people just criticising them because they are women, showing their femininity and earning a good, honest day's crust.
Yeah.
When they don't want to do the other things that people want to do.
Well, it's a job. At the end of the day, it's a job, but I don't know if anyone's holding a gun to their heads behind to say you have to be a walk-on girl.
No. So let them do it if they want to.
Not everyone can be a walk-on girl as well. Notice how Lizzo is not a walk-on girl.
No,
Coincidence? I think not.
Yeah, and okay, and so Jonathan, I mean, you're a fan of the walk on girls. Do you think this is a retrograde step to bring back, you know?
The cheeks. Bring back the cheeks.
I'm just thinking I might identify as a walk-on.
Patrick,
Absolutely not. You need to
not
wax
amaze
everything.
you. I've never seen a darts match in my life, and I don't think I ever will. So I probably never even. I don't think I'd even heard of this.
You've never seen the
not
cheeks?
a working class idea, are we?
But I mean, does it thrill me? No. I kind of feel that women have the right to do this, and I think that actually that we should liberalise sex work. Actually, on this, if we go further down the route of that conversation, I think people have the right to do this, but I don't think in this particular context it sets a fantastic example for women in the modern world.
Oh, yes, it does.
I don't think it's a brilliantly feminist move. I think the women have the right to do this work.
We can free the nipple, we should free the cheeks. Absolutely.
All right.
Free it all.
I'm going to just kind of slowly wrestle our way out of the gutter now and show you the highbrow incident that took place at a Russian circus. So this is the terrifying moment that a bear appears to turn on its handler at a Russian circus show. Now, warning, some viewers might find this distressing. So that bear was made to like dance on a hoverboard and do all of the stuff that you get at those kind of really horrible old school circuses, right? Yeah. And that bear obviously decided one day, it looked at the guy and was like, hang on a minute, you're in the cage with me. I can have you.
Was he That's cage fighting. That's proper cage fighting.
Is he alive?
Yeah, no one was hurt. Sorry, my producers did check. No one was hurt.
No one was hurt?
With that
by a bear attack?
Yeah, I know.
Are you sure?
He probably took his teeth out. It's Russia. Yeah. Oh, it's Russian news. Yeah, no, so Russian news told us that no one was hurt in the bear attack.
So he's dead.
Yeah. He probably will not be seen again.
Both of them are dead.
But no, but
Both of them are dead.
You know what I will say?
You let down the state.
No, can I just say something? This will probably be controversial. I don't want to see anybody get hurt, but in situations like that, I must admit, I'm always on the side of the animal.
I'm just saying, you know, natural selection.
It's
not at all. You go keep a bear like that in a cage and I think, you know what, good for you for having a go.
I think the bear was saying, I want a raise, and you're not giving it me.
Right. Yeah.
He was probably part of a union. We don't know.
It's part of the bear union.
Absolutely.
Bear necessities, it.
Right. All right, OK. It's time to reveal today's greatest Britain union jackass. How long have we got? All right, welcome back. So, 2 minutes on this. Esther, your greatest Britain, please.
Sorry.
All right.
Spencer Matthews, that segue was hilarious.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like I've lost control, isn't it?
Yeah,
Go
well,
on.
anyway, for completing a record-breaking charity challenge, he ran 30 desert marathons in 30 days.
Yeah, mega stuff. 30 marathons in the desert in 30 days. Well done, Spencer. Right.
I went for Taylor Swift for two reasons. One, the economy has risen, just her turning up. And two, my train worked perfectly last week for the first time in months because it was just taking all the people back who'd been to the Taylor Swift concert.
Really?
Thank you for getting my train on time.
Well done, Taylor Swift. OK.
Oasis, got to be Oasis. Oh. I am so excited for these concerts. I will be absolutely on my phone, sort of clicking on Saturday morning.
I hope they don't bring back those haircuts. Good Lord.
I am also mad for it, and today's greatest Britons are Oasis.
Are you
oh my God, I've never won.
I've never won.
100 million
Keir Starmer wants them as a wonder wall on the border.
I've got all of the ticket apps loaded up. I'm ready. 8 a.m. is it Saturday morning? I'm going to be on the... Right, let's whiz it on. Who's the union jackass?
Mark Zuckerberg.
Right,
for saying a little bit too late that censoring COVID posts was not a great idea.
Yeah. I think he should always be the jackass.
He's an odd bloke. Anyway, go on.
He needs a wig.
Go on, Stephen.
Mine is the BMA.
The BMA, good. The bloody-minded activists.
That's right, exactly that. The BMA for just being bloody-minded activists.
All right, go on, Jonathan.
Mine is President Macron, someone that the left and right can unite to hate, because he has basically begun some kind of coup in France, and I think we should be talking about it more. Basically, they had French parliamentary elections a couple of months ago, and he's basically disregarded the results. And that's outrageous.
No, it is. It is. I've gone for the BMA. Now I do feel as though I should have gone for Macron, actually. But anyway, there we go. Couldn't be winning both.
Yes,
Right. Thank you very much, everybody. Another thoroughly enjoyable show. Thank you to everybody who's watched and listened. It's Headliners next to take you through a load more of tomorrow's newspapers. I'll see you tomorrow at 9.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. From the Met Office, here's your latest GB News weather update. Whilst there is still a bit of rain around for some of us across parts of the southeast, we're looking ahead to some hot weather tomorrow. That's because we're staying ahead of the front that's lingering across parts of the UK at the moment in the southeast, and so some warm or hot air pushing its way in. But where we're under the front as we go through this evening and overnight, there will be some more cloud and some rain. So particularly across parts of northern England, southern Scotland, but also Wales and the southwest later on, seeing some rain as well. Also some patches of mist and fog here. In the southeast, because of that warmer, hotter air, temperatures aren't going to drop a huge amount tonight, and in fact even further north, not turning particularly chilly because of the cloud and some showery rain across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. So across Scotland, first thing, yes, there may be some heavier showery bursts perhaps clearing away, but on the whole for many it's starting largely dry, but some showers quickly moving into the far west of Scotland. Also the far west of Northern Ireland having some showers but drier further east, and then that front lingering across northern England bringing a damp start to the day here for some, and down western parts of Wales and southwest England also a bit of wet weather here. Further east though, lots of dry sunny weather to start the day tomorrow, particularly across the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast, and here it's going to stay largely fine through much of the day. Across the southwest, any rain's likely to break up, and so it's going to turn drier here. Meanwhile, across Scotland and Northern Ireland, heavy showery rain pushing its way in from the west. In the southeast, temperatures are going to be higher than today, highs of around 28 or 29 Celsius. As we go into Thursday, there will be more showers across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, perhaps northern and western England and Wales as well. But further south and east, you have a greater chance of staying.
It's the final week to see how you could win an incredible £30,000 in cash. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. Time is ticking. Get your entry in now. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at